Have you ever looked at your dog and just wished it could tell you what it's thinking? Well, the question of whether animals can learn our language isn't just wishful thinking. It's been the focus of some really groundbreaking and pretty controversial scientific research. So let's get into it and see what we've actually figured out.
Okay, get this. It's the mid-1980s, Boston Harbor. Someone hears this gruff voice yelling, "Hey, hey, get out of there!" They look around, but there's nobody there. Turns out the voice was coming from a seal. Yeah, a seal, popping its head out of the water, making these incredibly human-like sounds. I know, it sounds nuts, but it's a true story.
Now that seal definitely sounded human, but was it actually using language, or was it just an amazing mimic? And that right there is the million-dollar question we're tackling today. What's the real difference between the way animals communicate and what we call human language? To answer that, we've got to lay down some ground rules first.
So let's start with the basics of communication itself. We really need to unpack the difference between the signals we send on purpose and the ones we, well, don't. That little distinction, it's everything when we're talking about language.
Think of it this way. If you sneeze, you're giving off an informative signal. You didn't mean to tell the world you have a cold, but your sneeze kind of did it for you. But if you say, "I'm not feeling well," that's a communicative signal. You intended to share that information. For this whole discussion, we're zeroing in on those intentional, communicative signals.
So how do the experts, linguists, tell the difference between a parent perfectly mimicking a phrase and an actual human conversation? Well, they have a kind of secret code, a checklist of 6 key properties that, as far as we know, make human language totally unique. Let's break down that code piece by piece.
First on the list is something called reflexivity. This one's a little bit of a mind bender. It's our ability to use language to think and talk about language. We can argue about the meaning of a word, or I can literally point out that I'm speaking English right now. And this is the perfect example. I can say, "This sentence is in English," and you get it. But a dog can't use one bark to explain what a different bark means. It just doesn't have that level of self-awareness about its own communication. That seems to be just a human thing. All right, property number 2, displacement. This is one of our linguistic superpowers. It's like having a time machine built into our language. We can talk about what happened last week, what we're going to do tomorrow, or even talk about things that don't exist at all, like dragons or superheroes. We are not stuck in the here and now.
Right. So when your cat meows at you, it's almost always about something immediate, like "I'm hungry now" or "let me out now." It's not telling you a story about that awesome mouse it almost caught yesterday. That ability to float through time and space with our words is a massive feature of human language.
Moving on to number 3, which is arbitrariness. Now, this sounds way more complicated than it is. All it means is that the words we use don't actually look or sound like the things they describe. There's no natural connection.
Exactly. The sounds D-O-G have nothing to do with a furry, tail-wagging animal. We've just all agreed, as a culture, that those sounds represent that creature. The connection is totally made up. It's arbitrary.
Okay, this next one is a huge deal. It's called cultural transmission. The bottom line is, you're not born with language. It's not in your genes. You learn it. You absorb it from the people and the culture you grow up in.
And this example just makes it so clear. A baby with Korean parents, born and raised in the United States, is going to grow up speaking English, not Korean, because that's what's all around them. But you could raise a kitten with a family of poodles. It's still going to meow. It's not going to start barking. Its communication system is hardwired. Next up, we've got productivity. You can also think of this as creativity. It's the simple but mind-blowing idea that we can create an infinite number of new sentences. We're not working from a script. We can say and understand things that have literally never been said before in the history of the world.
And this is a major dividing line. Take vervet monkeys. They have a specific call for leopard, another for eagle, another for snake. But they can't combine them to warn about a new threat. They have what's called fixed reference, a closed list of signals. Ours is wide open.
And finally, the 6th property, duality. This is the ultimate design feature of language. It's super efficient. We have a small number of meaningless sounds, like b, in. By themselves, they're just noises. But we can rearrange those few sounds to create a huge number of different words with totally different meanings, like bin and nib. Okay, so we have our 6-point checklist for what makes language, well, language. Now for the fun part. Let's apply this code. Let's head into the lab and check out those famous and, yeah, pretty controversial experiments trying to teach chimps to talk.
The early tries back in the 40s with a chimp named Vicky were pretty much a bust. It turns out chimps just don't have the vocal anatomy for human speech. But then, in the 60s, everything changed. A chimp named Washoe was taught American Sign Language. And that opened the floodgates for new approaches in the 70s with chimps like Sarah and Lana, who used things like plastic shapes and keyboards.
Washoe was an absolute rock star. She learned more than 100 signs. But here's the kicker. She started putting them together in new ways. The most famous example? She saw a swan for the first time, a bird she had no name for, and she signed waterbird. I mean, wow. Was this productivity? Was she inventing a new word?
At the same time, other scientists were trying totally different things. You can see here, Sarah used these little plastic shapes to build sentences, and another chimp named Lana used this special keyboard, called Yorkish, to punch in requests like, "Please machine give juice." They were getting creative to get around the vocal cord problem.
So these results started coming out, and they were amazing. The media, of course, went wild with it. But behind the scenes in the scientific world, a huge debate was starting to ignite. People started asking some really tough questions about what was actually happening.
And you basically had two camps. On one side were researchers like the Gardners, who raised Washoe. They were convinced she was having real conversations. But on the other side, you had skeptics like the psychologist Herbert Terrace. He argued that it was all just a very sophisticated trick, that the chimps were just cleverly imitating their trainers to get a grape or a tickle.
And then, just when the debate was at its peak, along came Kanzi. And Kanzi changed everything. You see, his mother was being formally taught to use that Yerkish keyboard, and she wasn't getting it. But Kanzi, who was just hanging around watching, started using it on his own, spontaneously. This was a bombshell. He wasn't being drilled for rewards, he was just picking it up, kind of like a human toddler does.
So where does all of this leave us? Well, it seems that while incredible apes like Kanzi can master really complex communication systems and understand spoken language at the level of a young child, they don't quite cross the line into full human language. They don't show that infinite productivity or that deep reflexivity. But what they have shown us is that the line between us and them might be a lot blurrier than we ever thought. And it leaves you wondering, if language is what makes us human, what does it mean if we're not the only ones who can get so tantalizingly close to using it?